Hey friends, so today I wanted to show you how to sew the koala together. Right now all I have done is the head, so we'll do the face now and then we'll come back when we have all the pieces done and sew the rest of the body together. So for the face, you'll have your nose, which you already have done. I like to put the string that's hanging out towards the top because I think that's a little bit more pointy, which makes them look cuter. You're going to place it over rounds 9 through 14, so counting down, I have round 9 marked and I have round 14 marked. So we're going to place the nose right over those rounds I have marked, and then we're going to take our large yarn needle and the tail, and then we're just going to go in through the back of the first stitch and then come up through the second stitch, making sure it's going all the way through the head part of the koala, just not the nose. Pull that through nice and tight but not too tight, and then another stitch in every stitch. We're just going to go around, and this is the running stitch, so it's just up and down all the way around until we have our nose on. Alright, I just wanted to show you how to knot this off of the back. This is the same knot we'll be using throughout the assembly. So what you're going to do is you're going to pull your string to the inside of the head. You're going to do an extra little stitch here, not pull it tight, leave this little bit of loop here. Then you're going to go through the loop twice, going same direction through the loop, and then you're just going to pull it tight, and that creates a little knot, and then you can trim it off about here. Alright, so now that we have our nose on, we're going to put our eyes on. So what you're going to do is you're going to go to the top of your nose here, and this is round 9, remember. So you're going to go about 3 stitches over from this top part, so this would count as the first stitch here, 1, 2, 3, and then put them between the rows of 9 and 10. So here's 9, here's 10, so we're going to go right in there. We're going to place our eye. If it's safety eye, put it on in the back. Mine are mushroom eyes, so I will sew them on in a minute here. But make sure if you're sewing eyes on or using buttons that you use acrylic yarn or something besides blanket yarn, because blanket yarn will snap with enough force, and that can be a choking hazard. So we're going to place that one eye there, and then going from the other side nose, 1, 2, 3, row 9 and 10, so in between those, and just place those right there. Then it'll look a little less funky once we have the head stuff too. Another note I want to make about the eyes now that I have them on. The back of mine are mushroom, but with sewing them on with the worsted weight yarn, I went into this stitch and this stitch, so each stitch on either side to give it more of a wide base. If I had just gone in the middle, it would have possibly pulled right through, or the knot in the back pulled out. And then on the inside, I went through a couple times elsewhere over here, and then went back through the mushroom again. If you are using safety eyes, make sure you go in the middle of a stitch instead of in between for the same reason, so it doesn't pull through. You can also create a smaller square with worsted weight yarn and just a little patch to put behind it, and then your safety eye would go through the head part and then that little patch behind it, and then it would be very unlikely for it to be pulled through, just to prevent any possible choking hazard. Alright, so now we have the main part of our koala done, all our pieces done, so we're going to close up the bottom of it here. So I already wove some of these through, but what you're going to do is you're going to take your tail and you're going to go through each stitch in a whip stitch fashion and going in from the same side. So then you have all these loops. So this is my last one, and then once you have all those, you're just going to take your tail and you're going to pull it tight, and that will close up the bottom of your koala there. So then we're just going to knot it, and then we'll move on to sewing the ears on. Alright, now we're going to sew our ears on. We're going to put them on rounds 5 through 9 on the side of the head. So going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to place them about right there, make sure it looks about where it should be from the front, and then when we do the second one, we just have to make sure that that's the same distance from the eye as this one is, but the first one doesn't matter as much. So you're going to take your tail end, make sure when the ear is folded, it's on that side, and your yarn needle, and then you take your yarn needle, you're going to loop it through one of the loops on the head, and then go through a stitch on the bottom of the ear. You're going to want to do each side of the ear by itself. Don't sew them together because that will give it more stability, and then also as you're sewing, make sure it stays curved like this So we're gonna go in a little bit on this next one as we head towards the middle, and this one will be the furthest one in, and then we'll start coming back out. And this is just the whip stitch in and out. And then when we get to the corner of the ear here, you're gonna do the same thing, just put the corner where it belongs, a little bit more forward, pull it firm, one stitch in every stitch of the ear, and then you're gonna flip it over to the back, and these are still gonna be right next to each other, but they're gonna be little different loops on the head, just so it doesn't flap around as much like it is right now. And then you're just do the same thing on the back, knot it off, and then place the other one, making sure it's the same distance from the eye, and also over rounds 5 through 9, and then sew the other one on. All right, now we are gonna sew the inside white part of the ear on. He's looking a little bit more like a koala bear now. So you're gonna take your piece that you have, place it on the inside of the ear that's already on the head. You don't want to sew these on first. This tail right here, you can either tuck it underneath, or you can pull it, take a crochet hook and pull it through into the ear or the head. So you're going to use your tail, yarn needle, and then we're going to do running stitch, the same as we did on the nose before, to stitch this on. So we're going to go all the way around as we stitch this on. And it's harder to see the stitches, but just kind of guess and feel where they are. It doesn't matter a lot as long as you have decent amount of stitches going all the way around. You're going to go about one running stitch per stitch that you crocheted when sewing anything. So got to the other side here. Now when you're doing the inside here, still do the running stitch, but what you can do to keep it, see how it's coming off from the head a little bit, you can do the running stitch into the actual head and then go back into the white part of the ear. Then it doesn't come up quite as much once this is pulled tight and knotted off. Just put a few more stitches, make sure it's secure, it's staying where you want it to stay, then knot it off, and then the ears are done. Right, now we're gonna sew the arms onto our koala. So in order to get the look that he has his head turned to the side, we're gonna put the arm over like this. So you're gonna take this eye and go down, and that's where the back of your arm is gonna be. It's gonna be lined up with that eye. Then it looks like he's kind of reaching out that way, but he's turned looking at you. And then you're gonna place it about 3 rounds down from the tightest part of the neck here. I believe it's like round 22, 21, 22, and there is this top round here. So you're gonna do the whip stitch that we have been doing, using the tail of your arm, and you're just gonna go all the way down. And I'm also only catching the front part of the arm here, then we'll go around and do the back in a minute. If we do them together, the arm's going to be a lot more floppy. Kind of same thing we did with the ear. Even though they're right next to each other, we want to stitch them on separate. And then I'm actually going to take these inside loops and I'm going to go over just a little bit. And then as I stitch these, I'm also going to go up a row here on the arm and catch that, and then do more of a running stitch in to the body further over there. That way the arm stays over this way more instead of flopping back and forth, and it looks like he actually is reaching that way. I'm going to finish sewing this on here and then we will do the other arm. Right, so placing the second arm on, if you go directly across from this arm that we already have, then the arms are going to be out kind of like this, and then he doesn't have his head turned as far and it's just not as cute. So what we're going to do is, instead of going directly across from this other arm here, we're going to go, so both arms are a little bit more towards the back, and then the middle of the koala where the nose is further in from each arm. And then what the other thing that you're going to do when sewing on the second arm is you're going to take your row here that you sewed the first one on and trace it across to the back, where you're going to place your other one. That way the arms are in the same spot on both sides. and then we'll sew it on the same way we did the first one, putting the few extra stitches on the inside so his arm stays over that way like he's reaching. So we'll sew that on and then we'll do the legs. Alright, so now with sewing the legs on, you're going to place your leg, if you go like this, a little bit further back than the arm on the body going down, and then about 5 rounds up from the center where you closed it. So this first part I already stitched it on, but you're just going to do the whip stitch to cover that edge, and then instead of going on and doing the back of this and putting it right here, what you're going to do is you're going to sew basically all the way around this hip joint, and that secures it to the body a little bit more, and keeps the leg facing out. So you don't want a lot of stuffing in this area right here. You want more of the stuffing up here a little bit, so it's a little bit rounder, but you don't want it super stuffed. So now that I did the whip stitch around that way, I'm going to continue doing the whip stitch around this way, but I'm just going to go all the way around, catching the inside of this leg and then spots on the body. And again, you want them about the same distance apart as your stitches are, or about 1 a row. And then go all the way up on the underside of the body here, and this just keeps it facing that way. And then you're going to go around back to the front and then knot it off. And then when you go to place the other side, your bear over, you already have the other arm on, so you know where the other leg is going to go, just a little bit further back than that arm, the same as on the front side. And then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to stitch this edge on, and then you're going to go all the way underneath, doing whip stitch around this hip joint, keeping him over that way. And your legs are on. Alright, at this point your bear is done if you like how he is now. Otherwise there's a few more things that you can add. So you can add the belly patch with the pipsqueak yarn. So when you put that on, you're going to use the tail same as everything else and just do running stitch around the edge here. You could also leave the top open here to create a little pocket. And if you aren't liking the size that patch is, you can adjust the stitches to make it a little bit bigger. I think the widest part here, it's 9 stitches across. You could make that 11 by doing an extra row of increase, or you could use a bigger hook to make that patch bigger, which would also make it easier to work with that yarn. The other thing that you can add at this point too is you can either sew the paws together with a little bit of gray yarn, so they would stay together like this if you want him to hang on to something. Otherwise, if you want them detachable, you can add a button and a little bit of acrylic yarn. Again, you don't want to use the blanket yarn because that can snap. So you're gonna sew the button on, making sure it's going through 2 stitches so it can't just pull out, and then tucking the knot underneath. The stitches are big enough that you can usually get it underneath. And then on the other side, you are gonna take a little bit of acrylic yarn, I'll just show you a little bit below this here, and go through like this, 2 stitches, create a little knot here that's flush against the stitches, but there's a little bit of slack, and double knot it, and then I'll show you on this one, it's already on. So you're going to have that knot, and then you're just going to turn it around through the stitch to tuck it in, and then that can go onto the button, and you might have to adjust that a little bit to make sure it's tight enough to fit around the button. So you can do that on the hands so they attach and detach, and on the feet just keep in mind that the buttons would be a choking hazard. If you want to do that, you can do that. You can finish the hands however you like, but otherwise you're done.